Hello, everybody, and welcome to this webinar about human rights and corporate accountability, or how corporations can violate human rights and what we can do to prevent that from happening. This webinar is mainly aimed at WILPFers. These are members of WILPF or WILPF sections, and explaining you how you can engage as part of WILPF. But I will also be talking more in general about the problems of corporate accountability and human rights, and I hope it will also be helpful for all others who might not be yet part of our movement. First of all, I am María Muñoz Maraver. I'm the director of the Human Rights Program of WILP, which means that I work in Geneva, and I would be happy to be in contact with all of you if any questions. You will have my contact details at the end. A few technical issues. So you, for those of you who are not used to using the system of webinars, you are muted. So if you are talking, it's normal that we can't hear you. We can also not see you. However, you can raise your hand. So you should have on the main control panel of on your computer, there should be a little hand that you can click on it, and that way you will be raising your hand, and you will be able to ask questions at the end of the webinar. If you have a very pressing question, you can also use it while we are doing the webinar. Another question is if you cannot hear me, or if there are any very serious technical issues, you can just log out, close the window, and then you will be able to log in again by clicking on the link again with no problem. Also, please be aware that we are recording, so if there are any security issues, do not hesitate to just let me know of your questions afterwards, more in private. First of all, WILPF and human rights, just a short brief introduction about the human rights program and what WILPF does in terms of human rights. The work on human rights is always very varied because human rights basically involves anything. But when it comes to what priorities WILPF has been working on, we could say that a lot of it has been on weapons and gender-based violence. Gender-based violence being in itself a human rights violation, and weapons playing a huge role in that gender-based violence being imposed. We have chosen to link our expertise on disarmament and our expertise on human rights, and we have worked quite a lot on, for example, how the widespread possession of arms by civilians, and in particular small arms, has had an impact on sexual violence, for example, in DRC, or how your exports of weapons might have an impact on gender-based violence in another country. Another topic in which WILPF has been working quite closely in terms of human rights has been corporate accountability. And this is the human rights violations perpetrated by corporations. And this is the topic that I would like to talk to you about today. Of course, women, peace and security, participation of women, prevention of conflict is an overall matter of WILPF, and we have also been bringing those topics to the human rights bodies that are in Geneva. So the Human Rights Council, the treaty bodies, if you know what they are, but in general, this is all the work that we bring to Geneva, and we try to make that link between those that are in the grassroots, in the local communities, and the work that is done in Geneva by the United Nations. Talking more concretely about corporations and corporate accountability, What I will do today is, first of all, I will show you a short introduction video that I think it's quite illustrative. And then we will get into first talking about what the problem is, what are the human rights violations that are mainly perpetrated by corporations, and why is it WILPF's problem? Why does WILPF care about it? Then we will go into the legal solutions that can be provided and the ones that are available today. And then we will talk about the treaty initiative. So this initiative to have an international treaty on corporations. And WILPF is a big defender of this initiative. So we would like to share with you why it is that we are so excited about this opportunity. Finally, like I said, this is a webinar in which I hope to talk to our members and have get our sections excited on this topic. So I will be talking about what members can do to work on this. Let me first show you this video. I hope it will be shown. You will be able to see it because I will be showing the subtitles. I think even if the sound is not so good, you will be able to follow because I will be sharing the subtitles with it.
Are you going to pick that up?
I'm incorporated.
What are you doing?
This water is privatised, $2 per drink.
You can't just do things like this.
Yes, I can. I'm incorporated. And now it's $3.50.
What?
Corporations help to create jobs and wealth, but like any entity, they can harm human rights. For example, they can hurt the rights of workers through exploitation, of consumers through unsafe products, of local communities through toxic factories and mines. So, are corporations accountable if they breach human rights? Under international human rights law, corporations have few, if any, direct obligations. Instead, governments must protect us from corporate human rights breaches, primarily by passing laws and enforcing them. But some corporations, particularly the largest multinationals, are very powerful, and some governments are corruptible or weak or underdeveloped, and they may turn a blind eye or even collude with abusive businesses. Certainly, many companies have very good human rights practices, and civil society can hold business to account through actions like consumer boycotts. But many argue that we need a new human rights treaty to directly bind corporations. And these arguments won't stop until governments consistently hold business to account when they breach human rights.
Excuse me, sir. You're jeopardising public health and the government won't allow it.
Ah, I'm incorporated.
Don't let him bully you.
Oh.
I'm organising a boycott. I'm sorry, the government is cancelling its contract with you. You might want to use that money for a lawyer.
Whatever.
Okay, so let me go back to where we were. So a video that shows indeed a reality that corporations do have some kind of impunity very often in their relationships with governments, as we were saying, but also that shows how it is under the power of the government and it is under the power of of the state to decide not to submit to the power of corporations anymore. So indeed, somehow giving some hope, the video, and this is what I would like to explain to you today, how states can really play that role. First of all, in the kind of violations that the corporation can perpetrate in their activities, we have seen some of those, and I'm pretty sure you are familiar with those, and you were recognizing them when they were talking about the water, making you pay for something that is a human right, such as water, and limiting your access to water, polluting indeed. I have included here in this slide a few of the aspects in which corporations can also be beneficial, because we don't shy away from the fact that corporations can have a benefit impact, even though there's a lot of there would be a long discussion on how that is and why and what role they really have. But it is true that they can bring investment to some countries. They can provide tax contributions. Sometimes they even contribute to developing infrastructure. But then we can see, first of all, in terms of tax contributions, very often they would avoid that. Even creating infrastructures, are these infrastructures aiming at the needs of the population, or are they aiming at the needs of the corporation? Because the problem with the corporation is that in itself, its goal is to make profit. So in itself, even if a corporation tells us that they are having some kind of corporate responsibility, social responsibility of corporations, in the end, we do know that their aim, the reason why they exist, is just to make monetary profit. So we can find that there are many conflict-related human rights violations that can be very worrying. There's definitely land grabbing. There's slavery in supply chains, very clearly in the textile industry. There is the use of military means. Many corporations use private military and security companies to silence somehow the protest against their activities. And of course, they contribute to environmental degradation. This is very much the case with many oil companies. It's also the case with mineral companies, energy dams. As we will see shortly, there can be impact on health, and of course on freedom of speech when peoples might oppose a certain project, and then they might be using private companies, security and military, or even sometimes the military means of a state to silence that freedom of speech. And this is something that is particularly worrying for WILPF. WILPF, in terms of its work with the problem of human rights violations by corporations, we focus on this conflict prevention, on how corporations can be a root cause of war. And we do believe that apart from many other problems in terms of the human rights violations in themselves, that the actions of corporations can lead to either fuel a conflict that is already existing, or to indeed create a new conflict. It is the case with the minerals and natural resources. Of course, when you are limiting the natural resources and making a use of natural resources that is not the use that its legitimate owners from its community and from its population believe it should be, of course you are giving way to a conflict, and in many ways also through the use of natural resources that are shared by several communities in peace, they can give way to a conflict. This is also the case with land grabbing. Very often they might gets into different communities that are sharing the same land or that have already established borders between the lands and how they share them, and then exploit them through land grabbing and give way to conflicts that afterwards are considered and labeled as some kind of ethnical problems. And indeed, there has been the root cause of that conflict is the fact that there has been land grabbing, and that somehow with very often a government might give away licenses to use land that is indeed considered as the property of individual communities. In DRC, in Colombia, in the cases of natural resources and minerals, we do know that places where the population has had to be displaced, then governments might give up that land, considering it has no owner, give it up for corporations, even though the legitimate owners have just had to be displaced because of the conflict. So we can see that there is a close link between the conflicts and the corporations in place. Very worrying is the use of militarization, as I was saying, from corporations. And this is also closely linked to violence against civilians that is perpetrated by those corporations, by either the use of private military companies or by the use of armies of states. And we have here the case of Berta Caceres. Also, Nelson Garcia was killed the same week or the same couple of weeks later. Berta Caceres was an environmental and human rights defender from Honduras, where she was protesting against an energy dam that was imposed, called Agua Zarca, that was imposed on her community. And as a member of COPIN, she was protesting against this and had reported many times that she had been threatened by some, so to say, they're like private security companies that are using military means to silence the population that are protesting against these macro projects that are harming the environment. So she was very brave. She was very brave in her defense of the rights of her community, of her people, and also of the Mother Earth. And she was assassinated in an assassination that is still under investigation, and with very poor investigation from the government. We imagine because of the corruption and the many links between corporations and governments, and how corporations manage to have their influence in governments and even in the way that justice is carried out in countries. And this is a very clear example of what WILPF is worried about, is the fact that corporations, for their own benefit, for their own profit, they are using, in some situations, private military companies to impose violent means on the population, or sometimes they even have agreements with the governments themselves, and the governments, they use the national armies to protect the facilities of corporations. So this is a very worrying, a very worrying factor of how corporations operate. And I would bear in mind that I'm all the time talking about big corporations, because these are the main worry when they become so big that they can talk from equal to equal with governments. In the case, I'll just go back because I forgot to say something. I think there's also an important factor in this case in Honduras is the fact that we are talking about countries that are highly militarized, that have many weapons circulating around, lots of firearms circulating, and civilians and non-civilians having these weapons. And but these are undeclared conflicts. These are not. So when we're talking about conflict prevention, we also have to be to think that we are also talking about those kind of conflicts that are not declared, but where you can see there is a big potential for an armed conflict because there are powers that are competing with each other, and there's a population that is clearly being attacked constantly and threatened constantly. And this has also been going on ever since. So we take the opportunity to also continue our advocacy for justice and protection of human rights defenders in Honduras. So why should WILPF be involved on this? I hope most of you by now are convinced that this is something that WILPF should care about. But of course, I think we could mention our manifesto from our last Congress, which has a chapter called Beyond Capitalism. And I would encourage you all to go and have a look in our website. Have a look to this manifesto, because it is just so thorough and can really inspire us. I can read, for example, how it talks about how corporations have outstripped the ability of elected governments to control our countries. So this problem of imbalance of power between corporations and governments. We have identified the capitalist system as one of the root causes of war. And we refused the human cost of capitalism mode of production. So this is closely linked to just refusing the fact that for example, we should have to wear clothes that have been produced by slaves. And we also think that there has to be an alternative that will need a creative work of solidarity across hemispheres. And I think this is really what we should be aiming at, and it's so inspiring to read that we have to find an alternative, but we are conscious that we will need to be creative and that we will need to work in solidarity. It will be a different structure that we will all need to also question our role within the current structure. Social justice is also something that WILPF has always been involved with. Like I was saying, the fact that the corporations have a role in armed conflict, so it's also something that is closely related to the peace work of WILPF. They also have a specific impact on women's human rights, the corporations. So there's also some need for WILPF to be there so that we can bring this gender approach and this conflict prevention approach. I think that is what WILPF can bring that can be different. And then, of course, the protection of the environment is closely linked to the work on this topic. And this is something that WILPF has decided in last Congress to work on. I have also would like to share with you a draft resolution that should be passed in the next international board meeting in June. And if you go to the bottom of your control panel of GoToWebinar, you should see something that is called handouts. There's one of them is called Human Rights Before Profit. There you can see the draft resolution. I have not put any logo or anything in because this is really just a draft and it will have to be discussed in the international board and it will have to be approved by the international board. But I think it can be useful for members to see a little bit what WILPFers are suggesting that we make as a statement. Like I was saying, there's also a specific impact on women. Human rights defenders that are female might have particular threats to their integrity. There's the threat of sexual violence has been used in many contexts in a very particular way to oppress the protest of the population. There is female work labor. It's not something that we have focused so much on because it's not such an easy link with conflict. But it's clearly female work labor is clearly something that has a very specific woman approach, because it is more prevalent in among women. Land grabbing has more of an impact on women because it's more difficult for women to claim the rights to the land, so they are more vulnerable to land grabbing. And in terms of access to justice, they have the same problem because they have more problems to administratively to claim justice and to access justice than when it comes to going against the corporations. It's even more of a problem, even if it's already just a problem for any person. And this is where I wanted to stop a little bit longer, is on this problem of access to justice. I mean, when a corporation, let's say that the corporation comes and is using private military and security companies to defend their production, or, for example, to defend a dam, an electricity dam, then if the population is protesting against this and a security company attacks them, they are incredibly vulnerable in trying to make justice for this, and in trying to make the link that this was the corporation that had hired them to silence us and to attack us, so that we will be silent. First of all, because of the means. I mean, if it's let's say it's a local population, indigenous peoples who are protesting against this, then of course they might have limited resources in going to justice and complaining about this. But then you have the problem that if the corporation is from another country, so the corporation is only there just to extract some minerals or to produce energy, there will be an absence of judicial framework. They might not know what country to put their complaint forward. Should it be in the country where the human rights violation took place, or should it be in the country of origin? It's very difficult to establish. There is, of course, the pressure from the business. They might pressure the population, but they can also corrupt the state. So there might also be state corruption, so that their judicial system doesn't accept a complaint, or they say it's not in this country that it should be in the other country, or just so that the government uses other ways, including the army, to repress the population and to ignore the complaints. So state corruption in some countries, especially countries where the corporation is even richer and even has more means economically than the government, it's very widespread. And we should, of course, take into account the responsibility of the state that has been corrupted, but we should not forget that means also that the corporation has been corrupting. So it takes two to dance. And then finally, they can have an additional problem in their access to justice, which is the trade agreements. And this is something that a lot of WILPFers have been working on, and you know very well about. It might be that even you are going to a court within your country where the human rights violation took place, where they attacked you or they tried to silence you when you were protesting, and then they might tell you, actually, according to our trade agreement, it is not a normal judge that you have to go to. You have to go to this arbitrary court, and it has to be your government that decides to go to the arbitrary court. So you as a person cannot directly just take the corporation to justice. And this is really what the video was about. This was really the situation that the video was trying to warn us about, is that sometimes there's really nothing you can do because the corporation has just different rights. And I wouldn't even say different, just more rights than a human being, just because they have these trade agreements, such as TTIP. And this is also very worrying, and something that we will try to find a solution for. I would like to ask you a little poll. So if you have a look at our, I think I can just. So if we have a human rights violation, like I just said, you know, you are protesting on the streets, and this corporation just comes and silences you. They attack you. They commit all kind of violence against you because you are because you have been protesting. And my question, and I'm sending you a poll right now, is if there is this, who should have been prevented? And now I'm not saying who is responsible for that human rights violation in particular, but in general, who should be preventing that this can happen? Who should be in charge of making sure that corporations are not able to violate, or who should be doing something, maybe doing some rules, maybe some policies, or maybe some laws? I think just a few more seconds until hopefully everybody saw the poll. It must be at the bottom of your control panel, I think. And I have really 50% of you have voted. Anybody else who would like to vote? Okay, let's go with this answer. So we have 29% of you thinks that is the home state corporation. 14% of you thinks is the corporation that should have prevented this. And 57% thinks is the host state where the violation has taken place. And I think probably all of you are right. There is no magic answer, but what I would like to express is that I think it has to be a mix of states. What I am trying to say is that corporations, yes, they have to commit to. They don't have to commit. They have to respect human rights, but it's not up to them to decide we would like to commit to human rights. That is why I wanted to put corporations in there and ask you, do you think it's their problem? It's not their problem. They have, like anybody else, like all of us, we have to respect human rights. And who prevents us from violating human rights? Well, it's basically the law. So that's why I think it has to be the states that have to protect us. And it has to be a combination. You've been mostly saying host state where the violation took place, but some of you have also said home state, and I think it has to be a combination. This is why we need treaties where they both agree and they say, okay, what is going to happen if there has been a human right violation, how are we going to do this? Whose justice are they going to go to? So the way the legal international framework is today is that we have more or less the text that you are seeing here. I can tell you briefly what they are. First of all, we have the guiding principles, United Nations guiding principles on business and human rights. Sometimes you will also see them quoted as the Wragge Principles. And these need national action plans developed nationally, in which a country, it's a bit like the 1325 national action plans for those who are used to that. It's a bit a country saying, okay, so we think the corporations should be not so nasty, you know, they should behave more or less okay. So they do a national action plan, which are just policies. They are not laws, they are just policies. Or they could do laws, but they don't have to be laws. And they will have basically a strategy and a plan on their policies for the next few years and how they're going to get to those means. So as you can see, I am already very critical in the sense that this is not something that is compulsory. Countries are invited to do national action plans, but they have not done so. And in many countries, they have started doing these national action plans and they have stopped. That was the case with Spain last summer. They had already started the national action plan, and then some corporations complained about it and they decided not to do them anymore. We also have the OECD guidelines, and these are a little bit like the Wragge Principles. These are not compulsory, not binding. I know, for example, those guidelines give way to some kind of complaint mechanism. If a population has, if a person thinks that there's a human rights violation against them by a corporation, but because these are not compulsory and they are not legal, then it means many countries have not sufficiently funded these help desks where you can complain. So there are a lot of issues on those. We have also some kind of regional or national or sometimes specific to a sector initiatives. There was a project in the EU on what are called conflict minerals, on how to ensure that the minerals are not related, that they haven't been produced in a conflict. And you have some national initiatives. For example, in France, there is an initiative currently that hasn't been passed yet, where they will give some kind of protest, some kind of mechanism for justice if there are human rights violations that are taking place abroad. But these are still very, very weak. I mean, for example, the national initiative in France, what it does is that big corporations will have to have a plan on how they intend to respect human rights. So it's still very driven by the corporation instead of driven by the law, instead of driven by, if you do this, you will be responsible for it. It's very much the corporation deciding how they are going to prevent. And this is why I was asking you, who do you think should be responsible for it? Because if we take from the point of view that it is up to the corporation to decide how they are going to prevent it, then we are taking the power away from the decision maker that are supposed to be the elected, the persons elected by the people, and we are giving it to the corporations. This is why these kind of non-binding, what they are called non-binding legal frameworks are very dangerous. And finally, we have this initiative to have a treaty, an international treaty on human rights and transnational corporations and other business enterprises, as it's called in its longer name. And this is something this is something that aims basically at finding a solution, at filling in the lacunes that we currently have. Basically, what we have is states that are weak, and I would say willingly weak. They want to be weak, or at least many of the home states, they want to be weak on how they ensure there is access to justice. So we need to reinforce the obligations of states to ensure that there will be access to justice and that there will be no widespread human rights violations by their corporations. So this is how reinforcing those obligations we could do with an international treaty. It will be filling in these lacunes where it will not be obvious for affected community what judge they should go to, what justice mechanism they should go to. All of this could be filled in, all those lacunas could be filled in by an international treaty where many NGOs will engage and ensure that things are clear and that the human rights mechanism will be there. This is why the Treaty Alliance, it's a group of many organizations, I think it's more than 300 organizations from around the world, have signed a joint statement to ensure that there will be an international treaty on this topic that will be aimed at protecting human rights. I have put down here a few of the organizations that we work closely with and that are part of the Treaty Alliance. There is FIAN, who works on food security, ESCRnet, who work on social and cultural rights. There's Franciscans International, the International Commission of Jurists, and of course we are part also of this Treaty Alliance. So all these organizations, all we have in common is that we all want a treaty that will protect human rights from the abuses of corporations. And as I will ask you later, I will invite you all to, as part of the Treaty Alliance, because you are part of WILPF, you are part of this Treaty Alliance, to participate and to really try to defend this treaty. So now what is this treaty? As I was saying, it has to establish that there is an obligation of the state to protect human rights. It should establish how to share that obligation. How does the country that is home of the corporation, how should it be responsible? How is the country where a human rights violation has taken place, how will it interact? It could, for example, recognize mutually the decisions from each other's judges and from each other's judicial systems. It could establish a way in which they would collaborate and have some kind of joint justice if there was a human rights violation. It really has to establish that today countries are not ensuring that human rights violations will not be perpetrated. So it will have to give them that obligation to not violate, to not allow violations from human rights. And many of you have asked me in the context of this treaty about the TTIP or TISA or these treaties that are of trade agreements that are being elaborated around the world with the USA. And I know many of the WILPFers have been very active against these treaties. And many of you have asked me, how would they work together? And basically, this treaty that we are defending is the opposite of the other. The TTIP, for example, it seeks to ensure that corporations will be able to work and that they will not be bothered about what impact they are having on the population. And what we want to do is to have a treaty that will ensure that the people will not be bothered by human rights violations from corporations. And you can see that very clearly when you have a look at the treaty initiative. Who is against the treaty initiative? Who is in favor of this treaty initiative? And then you can just turn it all around, and that is the exact the exact opposite to TTIP and the other connected trade agreements. I am hoping that many of you are from those countries that are against this treaty, and that you can also join us in defending and in advocating for such a human rights treaty. I mean, countries that we have against is the USA, Canada, Australia. I mean, any of the so-called richer countries, they will be against it. The European Union as a whole is also opposing this treaty very much, and is something that we need to be changing soon. And I think it should be part of our TTIP advocacy. Then you can see the leaders of defending this treaty on human rights are Ecuador and South Africa. And I think this is also important to see, because these are countries where you are probably thinking, but they have many human rights violations within their countries that are perpetrated by corporations. And I think this is also what is important, is that states and governments, they can very much be in connivance with the corporations. They can be corrupted by corporations, and but they are also the main responsible. They are also the actors that can make changes. So of course, in no way we have to be blindly against or for a government, but in that way you can see that some governments might, even though they are conscious that they have problems within their borders, they might also be internationally trying to make some kind of justice and to help and contribute to this not repeating itself in the future. So I think that that is why we really need to support a treaty that, at the end of the day, we will be able to request responsibility from any government. That it can be the host country of a corporation or the home of a corporation. So if we think about what members can do, one of the things that you could do is be part of the human rights bodies reports, and I have been in contact with some members. These reports are reports in which I would like to share what corporations from your countries are doing in other countries, and have a look and trying to link us with the sections in those other countries, and really report on the responsibility to prevent. And if you have a look at the handouts at the bottom, you can see that there is a document for CEDAW. It's STARS final formatted, actually. And this is an example of a report that we have done on Sweden, where we were sharing about the human rights violations perpetrated by Swedish corporations abroad. So this is an example of the kind of advocacy that we could do. And this is also our way of reminding the government, you have to be part of this treaty. You have to do something about what your corporations are doing abroad. There is also a way to work within the Treaty Alliance. The Treaty Alliance, they have loads of national organizations, and you can always ask me, and I can try to put you in contact with the national organizations within your countries, so that you can work with other organizations in the Treaty Alliance and advocate for this. So this is the same to say that you should be trying to influence the national politics within your country. Bring this to the conversation. This is something that is often not part of the conversation. So bring it to the national conversation. You should, of course, bring the voices of women, especially women affected by corporations. We have to bring them to this process of the treaty elaboration, and we can also we should always bring their message, of course. So trying to make that link, if you are part of the affected communities, or if you are in contact with them, trying to make that link with us, that will always be welcome. And then building this international solidarity. I mean, not everything has to go through the Geneva office. So talk to the other sections, talk to if you know that there is a corporation from your country that comes from someone from a country that comes from a country where we also have another section, or the other way around, try to establish that link with within our sections and build a solidarity where we both advocate with the same goal, but on both sides of the problem. Just a little reminder on what milestones are upcoming on this topic. There will be the international board meeting in June, in which, as I mentioned, there will be the resolution that will be voted on, and that I have shared on the handouts. There will be the next negotiation of the treaty. It will be from the 24th to the 28th of October. And this will be an opportunity for WILPF to bring our message to any affected communities, any affected women that should be here, or any message that we should bring forward. I would say, please share it and be part of it. Also communicate on it. Pressure your government before this. It's called Intergovernmental Working Group. Before this session of negotiations, pressure your government so that they will be there, because many countries last time just came to block. Ask them to come to negotiate and to be productive and positive about it. There will be also the Forum on Business and Human Rights in November. And this is not something that WILPF participates too actively on, but it can also be a very good learning opportunity. And we don't participate so actively on it because it's called business and human rights. Often when you see business and human rights, it means this, as I was saying earlier, this soft law where things are only done with the approval of the corporation, and the corporation has their say about how to do it. So this is the reason why we are not so active on it. But it's still an opportunity to learn from what is said, because there are many panels that talk about this topic. So it will be here in Geneva, and if you would like to attend, or if you are part of it, just let us know. And I think also they do quite a lot of broadcasting, so you can probably also watch it from home, or watch some parts of it from home. And like I said, there are all these human rights bodies reports. They will be France this July. We are already preparing a report on French corporations. There is Canada in October, November, Switzerland also in October, November. We have Germany for CEDAW also. All of these are the Committee on the Rights of Women in January, February. So there are opportunities for denouncing the violations by corporations abroad in this particular case against women. And I just wanted to zoom out, to finish with, zoom out a little bit and just say that all of these, when we are talking about corporations, are part of this extraterritorial responsibility of states that we should fight with an international solidarity, as it says in our manifesto. And is that this extraterritorial responsibility means that the states cannot just allow anything, because if the human rights violation doesn't happen within their country, then they don't care. I mean, the relevance in your country, it could be on many ways. There is corporations. This is what we've been talking about during this webinar, but there's also arms exports. This is also part of the extraterritorial obligation. A country that is getting richer and richer through exporting weapons and fueling conflicts around the world. There can be mineral extraction that is being perpetrated abroad. There are military interventions. This is also an extraterritorial obligation, not to violate human rights when you are doing a military intervention, or I would say rather not to have a military intervention, because it's impossible not to violate human rights if you are doing that. So, you know, you should be thinking about who knows on these topics about in your section, what context do you have with the affected countries. Again, in particular, using our sections would be, using or other sections would be key, so we can develop that contact with each other. The ways in which it can be seen, and we do it in the human rights program already, is that extraterritorial obligations in weapons, it could be the Arms Trade Treaty or the exports of firearms. So it's around the import and export of weapons. For corporations, like we are saying, it's fighting for this treaty. But we can also have a look at other aspects of extraterritorial obligations of states. You know, the participation of women. A state should refuse a peace agreement that has no women in it. This is also an extraterritorial obligation, because it concerns something that a conflict that took place in a different abroad in a different country, because as you know, countries kind of sponsor peace agreements that are not related, where they were not directly linked. And this is also the case with refugees. You know, the protection of refugees, providing humanitarian visas or safe ways to get in the country. All of those are part of the extraterritorial obligations that you have towards those that are victims of a conflict abroad. I would like now to open the floor for questions and answers. And as I said earlier, you can just raise your hand. There should be a little hand on your control panel if you have any questions or any comments that you would like to share, or initiatives that you would like to start. Oh my God. Hello, can you tell me if, can you raise your hand, please, and tell me if you have been hearing all this time, because I just saw a question saying that we might not, that you couldn't hear me. Okay. Yes, Ellen? Hello? Hey, Eileen. Eileen, you have the floor. Did you hear me correctly, and did you see the presentation? Just 1 second, I'm gonna try to. Can you hear me? But can you hear Eileen? I can't hear Eileen. Yeah, I can only hear you. Okay. Yes, Fanny, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you for this great presentation. I had sent the question because I couldn't see the PowerPoint presentation, but I could hear you well, so that was good. I have a question concerning the treaty. If we would manage to get lots of states to sign a treaty, what would be how would you monitor the implementation of such a treaty, and what kind of mechanisms could be used to ensure its enforcement? Would it be through existing mechanism, or would it be the creation of a new court, or how would that work?
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. I think I can, it will be a discussion will be more fluid if I answer right away. So in terms of the implementation, because we are just starting, it's still very unclear how it will be. And as WILPF, we have developed a position that I can share with all of you, or you can just send me an email if you're interested on having it. But our position hasn't gone so much in detail in what it is that we will be asking in terms of what mechanism for implementation. There are several ideas. One of them is, for example, we could have something like the CEDAW committee or the human rights committees, and we could have it as somehow they will periodically have a look at each country and see how they are doing, if they are implementing correctly or not. That is one of the ways. Another of the ways is to have an international court where in case that there is a conflict between a corporation and a country or a person, that that court could take on that case. But some say also this court will be too far away from the people. It will be international, and it will be very difficult to get to it. So I would say that some of the most popular views is that the treaty, it will agree what national justice systems will be used, and if that doesn't work, if after a little bit, you find that you don't get justice because of one country or the other, because of the home state or the state where the violation takes place, but then you will take that country to this international court. So that is all.
What kind of international criminal court is working?
So that wouldn't be really the criminal court, because you would be taking the country to.
No, what I mean is it would be kind of a complementary system where you'd have primarily the national court, and then if it doesn't work, the international court. But that would raise, of course, other challenges such as cooperation and funding and all that.
Exactly. So it would be, and I think this would probably be in benefit of the population, that it would be after you have exhausted the domestic mechanisms. And then the other possibility is with the International Criminal Court is just to expand the scope of the International Criminal Court, and that you could go to that court if nationally it doesn't, domestically it doesn't work. You could go to that court, but against the corporation. This is the main difference. Is are we going to eventually go against the corporation, or are we always going to go against the state? These are some of the details that are still, we still have to see, because if you go against the state, then it will always be because they didn't do justice with the corporation. So ultimately, it will always be about the corporation not having violated.
Okay, thank you.
But yeah, thank you very much. But as I said, it's really just been negotiated, and it's very early on, and we just need states to be part of if states don't come to talk, then we're never gonna get there. And I think we have a question from Heidi.
I just would like to know in practice if, for example, the way of making the secrecy which was on the TTIP disappear through the Greenpeace opening the has this had a political effect really on how to deal in future with the treaty? This is perhaps not really linked to the Human Rights Treaty, but especially to this TTIP now. But it's a psychological effect, perhaps, to give more space to also to discuss the human rights issue in another way.
Yeah, no, I think I haven't seen much change, to be honest, in how it is being discussed. I do know that in the discussions of this treaty, they are trying to make it as public as possible. And Heidi, you were there and you saw it's very legal and it's very technical, but still, at least they were. There was webcast, so you could see it around the world. So they are trying to really make it the other side of the coin, that this is completely public and the other one is completely private. But I haven't seen, as far as I've heard, I haven't seen any major changes in the fact that I think our trouble is in trying to. It's just very difficult to explain to lots of the population how this is important for them. And I think even if it's not secret, even if things are made public, it's just we still have a lot of work to do in trying to convince people in why TTIP is so bad for them, because in many ways it just seems too far away. Do we have any more questions? I can see Eileen's microphone, I think, is not working, unfortunately. Okay, well then, thank you very much. I will close the webinar here. I hope you can share it. Also, I hope you can have a look at the handouts that I provided, and please be in contact with me at these contact details. Please do let me know if you have any questions, if you would like to be further involved, and share it with other WILPFers. We will publish the video of this webinar, I think, in a few days. So please share it with your contacts so that we can all work together on this topic. And I'm looking forward to talking to all of you during the IB meeting. Bye.